Hey guys, Willie from No Bowl Piano, and in case you don't know me, I've taught thousands of students around the globe, written over a dozen books on music, toured and played even at the famed South by Southwest Festival. I am also the creator of the Circle of Fifths is Bullsh series, and boy has that started a firestorm with some people. Today though, we're going to talk about part 3, which is piano chord progressions, and this is my no bullshit approach. Okay, so now, one, I'm assuming that you watched my first part 1 and part 2 lesson. Second of all, I'm assuming that you understand the major scale and how to make the notes of the major scale. Again, check out part 2 of my series if you don't know that major scale. The question is, how can we easily create chord progressions and figure out the chord progressions of just about any song? Wouldn't it be great if you could do that? And there really is a way in which you could do that. The Circle of Fifths is not that answer. Even though I've seen it touted as that, it's not that answer. The answer is diatonic chords. You have to know your diatonic chords and your diatonic harmony. Don't worry, by the end of this video, you're going to understand what diatonic chords are, and I'm going to show you some practical examples of how to figure out some popular songs using these diatonic chords. Hey guys, sorry for the interruption in the video. I know this video is going to be long. I got a lot of information to share, but if you want to get the audio file of this to be able to take it when you're going, just go ahead back to No Bowl Piano and it will be part of the free resources. All right, back to the video. First of all, what does diatonic mean? It basically means that it's notes from the scale. So diatonic means that it's notes from the scale. Of course, I'll have the comments on this video and like all the technical people are going to say, well, it really involves only notes proper to the prevailing key without chromatic alteration. That's the Google definition, and I'm sure you can get some even headier definitions. I think, like a definition that long, I'm going to show you bandstand knowledge. All right, so what exactly is bandstand knowledge? Well, like I said, I've been playing and touring for over 30 years. I've recorded several albums, my own albums, other people's albums. So I've had the privilege of being able to play with some incredible musicians over the years, and in some incredible spots. And that's gained me knowledge that I could share with my students. Now, I've also taught as well. So you probably see that I have a passion for teaching, and I have a very logical way of breaking everything down. So you get the benefit of somebody who's actually been out there in the trenches, touring, recording, playing gigs after gigs, and then also somebody who has taught thousands of students, written books, and actually studied education. I'm going to do some swearing, okay? Don't worry, I'm going to bleep out the swears because, I know some people don't like swears, but for these No Bowl piano lessons, there will be some swearing, and I'm also going to seem like I'm a little bit angry, like that guy over there, now and again. And the reason that I'm a little bit angry is because I have found so much bull out there when it comes to learning the piano, especially on YouTube. There is no shortage of people out there teaching you stuff on YouTube, but the problem is that sometimes there's just some real oversimplifications. And if you have any questions on that, just take a look. You'll see, oh, the one jazz lick that you can use for all of your solos. There's no one jazz lick you could use for all of your solos. There's no one trick to figure out 500 songs. It's like it takes years and years of practice. And if you're not willing to put in the time and practice, then stop the video right now, go someplace else. All right? Now, if you like what I'm saying, I suggest subscribe to my channel so that you know when I come out with new lessons. And also, I'm going to show you at the end of this video, if you go back to nobowlpiano.com, you can get my Piano Essentials worksheet. So moving on. Diatonic chords are created by making chords, now that's a triad or a seventh chord, using only notes from the scale. The quality of the chord will be the same in each key. All right, so now let's break this definition down. So diatonic chords, remember that diatonic means notes from the scale, all right? So diatonic chords are chords that are only using notes from the scale. So if I have my C major scale, that means that all of the chords that I'm going to create are going to have white notes in it. There will be no black notes in any of these chords because all of the black notes are what would be considered non-diatonic to the key of C, or to the C major scale. A lot of times I say key and scale, and they're really kind of interchangeable at this point. I know, again, you're going to get the tech heads. They're going to say, well, it's not really right. No, it's not. But I want to boil things down for you to make it easier for you to learn. You can always learn all of that technical mumbo jumbo later. But I want you to actually learn how to play and get this stuff under your fingertips. So when I say the key is C, I'm really talking about the C major scale right now. So when I'm making these diatonic chords, they're being created only using notes from that C major scale. To create the chord, I'm just going to skip, right? Skip. And I'm going to go through each one of these and show this to you in greater detail, all right? But now the quality of each of these chords is going to be the same no matter what key I move into. And I'll show that to you in a second. All right, so let's start with this scale. This is my C major scale, right? So we create a chord on each note of the scale, like I showed you before, created a chord on each note of the scale, and then we label those chords using Roman numerals. 1 chord, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I said it's a little bit different than numbering the scale 1 through 8, because when we get back up here, we don't say that this is 8, we say that it's 1 again, all right? So we only have 7 diatonic chords in a major scale. 7 diatonic chords in a major scale. Can we create diatonic chords in other scales? Yeah, we can, all right? But a lot of times when we're talking about our diatonic chords, we immediately just kind of start at first with our major scale, okay? All right, so now we also use Roman numerals. I've gotten comments in the past, oh, why do you use Roman numerals? Because that's what we've done. That's what we've done for hundreds of years, and that's what we're going to continue to do. So stop your whining and learn your Roman numerals. There they are right there. It's pretty simple, all right? So let's move on. Key of C, the 1 chord, we play the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th notes of the scale, right? So there you see all in orange, those are the notes of the C major scale, right? Those are your notes of the C major scale. If we play the 1st, 3rd, and 5th notes in a major scale, that gives us our 1 chord. That would be a C major chord, right? Or a C major triad. The next chord is your 2 chord. And we would call this a D minor chord, or a D minor triad. Next chord is my 3 minor chord. This would be an E minor chord or an E minor triad. The next chord is F, all right? That's my 4 chord. You'll see that here it is uppercase. So you see how the 4 here is uppercase? Let's go back though. See how the 3 and the 2 are lowercase Roman numerals, right? That's because they're minor chords. But the 1 and the 4 are uppercase. Why? Because they are major chords. With the Roman numerals, because we could see major and minor much easier just by if it's uppercase or lowercase. So there's my 4 chord. That's my 4, 6, and 1 from the scale. The 4th note, the 6th note, and the root from the scale. A lot of times we call that 1 or the roots, all right, of the scale. We can call it either. Next, we have the 5 chord. That is my G major triad. G major chord. That's the 5th, the 7th, and the 2nd notes of the major scale. Okay. Next note is my 6 minor chord, which is my A minor chord. This is A, C, and E, A minor triad. The next one is a 7 chord. Now, typically what I would do is I would put in a 7 and I would actually add in a little diminish to that, okay, to be technically correct. So let me add that in right now while we're doing this. So I add that little diminish symbol to it up top like that, okay, but sometimes you'll just see it written as lowercase 7 like that. Okay? So, but this is my B diminished triad. That is my 7 diminished chord or 7 diminished. The question is, how does this help me create chord progressions and learn new songs? Well, first of all, there are many common progressions. So like my 1 to 4 to 5 to 1, you know, going from 1 to 5 to 6, 4, going from 1, 6, 4, 5. Okay? There are many, many common progressions, and you will hear as we start to make some practical examples here how these common progressions come back time and time again. What's important to note, right, is what I said before is how the chord quality is the same in each key. Okay, so let's talk about that for a minute. First of all, the quality of a chord is basically, is it major or minor or diminished? You know, is it a major chord, a minor chord, diminished chord, augmented chord? What is the quality? The 1 chord here is major, 2 is minor, 3 is minor, 4 is major, 5 is major, 6 is minor, 7 diminished. Okay, those are our diatonic triads in the key of C. The beauty is, guess what? I move to the key of F. Again, here's my F major scale. I start on the F note of the F major scale, and I build my diatonic triads, right? There's the second one, right? Is that right? Or is that wrong? Well, what do you think? Here's my F major scale. Here's my 1 chord. Is that my 2 chord? Is that my 3 chord? Is that my 4 chord? Now, if you answer no to the 2 and the 4, you're absolutely correct, right? This is not my 2 chord. This is my 2 chord. Why is that my 2 chord and not this? This is my 2 chord because in the key of F, we have a B flat. And remember, our definition of our diatonic triads is that we are creating chords on each note of the scale using only notes from that scale. So that means there's F major, there's G minor, 2 minor, there's A minor, 3 minor, there's B flat major, 4 major, C major, 5 major, D minor, 6 minor, E diminished, which is 7 diminished, and then back to my 1 chord. So notice that the pattern is the same. Right? So if I go back, right, up to here, the pattern was 1 major, 2 minor, 3 minor, 4 major, 5 major, 6 minor, and then 7 diminished. And we can even fix that right here as well, just to be technically correct, okay? Well, it just took it out on me. But anyway, you know it's 7 diminished. So we want to make sure that we know this in all 12 keys. Now, this is something that takes time to learn. Don't think that you're going to learn it within a week, nor do you have to learn it within a week. Now, how this helps you is because now, rather than thinking, oh, let's go back to the key of C, all right? Rather than thinking, oh, it goes to a C chord, then to a G chord, then to an A chord, then to an F chord. No. We don't think of it that way anymore. Now we think of it as 1, 5, 6, 4. Because don't forget, if I were to say, oh, it goes to a C, I'd also have to say, is it major, minor, diminished, what? So it goes from C major to G minor to A minor to F major, okay? Takes too long, right? C major, G major, A minor, F major versus 1, 5, 6, 4. Now, if I stay, again, like I'm saying, this is bandstand knowledge. So if I stay on the bandstand, oh, it goes to C major, then to G major, then to A minor, then to F major. You see how long that takes and how much information can get lost? Whereas if I just simply say, oh, yeah, it's a 1, 5, 6, 4 progression. Boom, easy. 1, 5, 6, 4. And guess what? Musicians will know how to translate that into any key. So if I want to do 1, 5, 6, 4 in the key of C, there it is. If I want to do 1, 5, 6, 4 in the key of F, there it is. I want to move to the key of, I don't know, B flat. 1, 5, 6, 4. I want to move to the key of D. 1, 5, 6, 4. Right? So I know how to move that progression easily into any key quickly. That is a lot easier than trying to say what the name of the chord is and the quality of the chord. Now, how this helps you learn new songs, right, is that once you start to understand these patterns and these progressions, now you start to hear them in other songs. It's especially prevalent in pop songs. Jazz songs are a little bit different because jazz songs tend to move into different key centers, which is outside of the scope of this lesson. But for pop songs, and some of the examples I'm going to show you today, yeah, it works great, and I'll show you in a second. All right, so now the first thing is understand that this is part of a larger process. So here's a picture of my no bow piano outline that I'm doing on my whiteboard in the office here. And no bow piano is going to go through this whole outline. This is years worth of knowledge of how we tree out or flow chart out the perfect practice plan for you, depending on, well, what is it that you want to learn? All right, so the basic steps to understand your diatonic chords and to be able to use them is, number one, you have to know your major scale. Now, hopefully at this point, if it hasn't really sunk in yet, this is why I say the circle of fifths is bullshit. Now, again, it's a great tool. You can use it for certain things. But when it comes to actually spending your time learning stuff, I'd rather see you spend your time learning the major scale. You learn the major scale, and then later you could do something like the circle of fifths, which is a little bit more technical in a chart. All right? So learn the major scale, because once you know the major scale, now you could create all of your diatonic triads. Remember, I couldn't have created those diatonic triads if I didn't know that C major scale. Then after you do your diatonic triads, you do your diatonic seventh chords. And I'll just give you a real brief overview of that. All you're doing is just adding on one extra note up top. So now the chords change. It's 1 major 7, 2 minor 7, 3 minor 7, 4 major 7, 5 dominant 7, 6 minor 7, 7 minor 7 flat 5, or some people call it 7 half diminished, and then back to 1 major 7. Okay? So those are your diatonic seventh chords. Do not worry about your diatonic seventh chords until you really know those diatonic triads. All right, so now let's move on to some practical examples. So I got onto YouTube and just found two practical examples. This is Girls Like You from Maroon 5, and Maybe It's Time from Bradley Cooper and A Star Is Born. All right, so when you listen to a song, here are the steps. A lot of people think, oh, I use my ear. No, that's wrong. You don't use your ear, you use your ear and theory, okay? Now again, that's one of those statements where I'm going to get a bunch of comments below this video, all right? So yeah, can you just use your ear? Absolutely. Sure, go ahead, knock yourself out. But it is the banging your head against a wall approach, because using your ear without theory is really going to be difficult. And it's really going to be difficult because every single time you want to go back to the song, you're going to forget it. You're not going to understand how to remember the song and how to break it down and how to analyze it. This is why we want to use theory. Well, what's the theory that we're using? The major scale, the diatonic chords. So the next step is, after you understand that, is find the key of the song. Now, probably one easy way of finding the key of the song is just play octaves. All right, so just like here, I'm just playing like double octaves. And I'll just play this while, play this throughout the whole song, play it especially at the end of the song, and see which one fits the best. So this is using your ear. You have to use your ear to figure out what key it's in. And the best way is just kind of like try and figure out what octave kind of sounds like it fits the best in the key. Now, sometimes what you'll find is it might be off by a fourth or a fifth, right? So you might hear that G sounds good, but then C also sounds good as well. So you'll have to use your ear and figure out which one really sounds like that's the key of the song. The next step is listen for root motion. So what you're doing is you're listening for root motion of, listen to the bass player, right? Listen to the bass, either upright bass or electric bass. Listen for that bass. Listen for the low note. You're listening for that root motion. So, right, in the Girls Like You song, you can hear how it goes from C to G to A to F. So now, once you have that power, and that information, okay, if it's in the key of C, which Girls Like You is, in the key of C, and it goes from C to G to A to F, well, now apply diatonic triads to it. C is what? It's my 1 chord, so it would be a C major. When I go to 5, that's my 5 chord, or when I go to G, that's my 5, right? So it would be G major. When I go to A, that's 6, so that'd be 6 minor. When I go to F, that's major. So now I know. I'm just playing around with this. I'm not playing it exactly as a song, so, don't write in any comments about how, I'm not trying exactly how the song goes. All right, yeah, I get that. I know. That's not the point of this. The point is, we're just trying to figure out these chords and trying to figure out the progression quickly. So that's the beginning part of that song. The Bradley Cooper tune, like... Now, in full disclosure, I've heard this song, I saw the movie, but I have not played that until 10 minutes ago. Right? So I'm able to figure that out quickly using those diatonic chords. How did I do it? Well, first of all, I figured out the key, right? So I knew it was in the key of G, and I could get that pretty quickly. And then I'm listening again for that root motion. I know when it goes to G to C, all right, that's a 1 to 4. And you can also be listening to the quality of the chord. You can hear, does it sound major or does it sound minor? Just to double check. Now, we know that the 1 chord and the 4 chord should be major, but sometimes composers like to do something a little bit different. Sometimes they might go 4 major and then 4 minor. Beatles like to do that, right? I love doing that in my music as well. That's a great sound. I like to go from 4 major to 4 minor. So we also have to use our ear, but remember, it's theory and ear together. Theory and ear together. All right, so G to C. And then it goes back to the 1 chord. And then I hear that it goes back to the 4 chord, and then... Now this gets a little bit tricky in here, and this is where a lot of times, a lot of these other piano lessons leave this kind of stuff out. You know, it's like, oh, 4 chords and you know every song. Yeah, no, it's not always that simple, is it? Okay, so here, what happens is, this is what we call an alternate bass, or slash chords, or bass motion. So it's a G chord, but then the bass player moves down to the F sharp, which is the 7th of your G chord, before moving to the E minor. So sometimes you will find that bass players will play some extra notes in there, in between the chords, because they're creating a line. And real quickly, without getting into too heady of an explanation, remember, music is all about line. It's all about the melodic line. Even when you have chords, these are lines moving in different directions. So everything is about the line. Well, guess what? Bass players like to be a part of that as well, and so they should, because that bass motion is what really adds some really nice motion to the song and a nice feel to the song. So that, you know, like getting that. And then sometimes what we'll do is we will change the chord, sometimes we won't change the chord. In here, I'd have to listen to it again, but they could be going from a G to a D with F sharp in the bass to an E minor, or they could just be keeping on that, staying on that G chord. But the point is that sometimes you're going to hear some extra motion in the bass, and you can kind of ignore that. Listen for the chords that come in on the strong beats. So if you're in 4/4 time, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? That's beats 1 and beats 3. If you hear, you know, a note on beat 4 or on beat 2, that might be a passing note. I'm not saying that it's always going to be a passing note, but it might be a passing note, and you might be able to just kind of forget about that. Typically in pop, rock, popular music, you're going to have chords on beat 1 and beat 3, sometimes just on beat 1. You know, like the Maroon 5 tune, like the keyboard player just holds that out. You know, it's just at the beginning of the measure. Now, I didn't listen to the rest of the song, so I don't know what happens with the rest of it. But at the beginning part, that's what's going on. So you'll find that sometimes it might last for the entire measure, or it might go beats 1 and beat 3. All right, so if you hear notes in between there, then you might be able to just leave those notes out. This is where, again, you would use your ear for that one. All right, or where do I start? You know, I've talked about a lot of information in this lesson, and if you like what you hear, please comment below. Make sure that you also take a look at the description and see what other videos I've done in this series. And also ask your questions as well. If you have a question about what I covered here, because there's a lot of information here, ask it in the comments below, and I'll be happy to answer it. Of course, subscribe to the channel and get the other lessons when they come out. But where you want to start is, we want to go back to this basic plan. you want to learn your major scale. Then you want to work on your diatonic triads, and then you want to learn diatonic seventh chords. Now, one thing that I didn't say is how you can create your own songs with the diatonic chords. See, the beauty is you start with your one chord. So here I am in the key of C. Start with your one chord, and then before getting back to the one chord, you can hit the five chord. Right? Five chord will always lead you back to the one chord. The problem, though, with the thinking of like, oh, I always play five going back to one, is that you don't always have to play five before you go back to one. You could do four before going back to one. You know, you could do your six minor before going back to one, all right? But 5 to 1 is what we would consider our strongest resolution. So if I want to sit down and I want to create a song off the top of my head, well, I'll start with like, okay, well, let me do a 1, 2, 6, 5 progression. Let's see what that sounds like. 1, 2, 6, 5. Yeah, I like that. And I bet when you heard that progression, you immediately probably heard 3 or 4 different songs. Haven't you? Right? I know I'm hearing different songs in my head when I'm listening to that progression. So these progressions you're going to hear as you start to play around with them. Oh my goodness gracious. Like, you know, like people use these all over the place. Let's try a different one. How about 1 to 3 to 2 to 5? All right. Now, there's 2 other things here. Well, actually 3 other things that I need to disclose to you here in order to really make this all work. Number 1 is you have to know those triads, and you have to know them in all inversions. I did a lesson on owning your triads. All right. I also did, some other lessons in this Circle of Fifths is BS series talking about owning those triads. So you really have to make sure that you own the triads. Number 2, you're probably wondering, well, what do I do in the left hand? Yeah, that is the secret, right? Isn't it? And again, that's that whole tree, right? That's that whole tree that I'm working on in No Bowl Piano to really teach you, okay, if this is what you want to do, this is how you break this down and this is how you practice this. And more information will be coming on that. But basically what it entails is you have to learn some different accompaniment techniques in the left hand. The one to start with is the octave, okay? So if I... Okay, so that's number 2, is getting some accompaniment in the left hand. Number 1 is knowing your triads. Number 2 is getting an accompaniment in the left hand. And number 3 is rhythm, right? So what rhythm do we apply to these chords? And then how do we start to break up these chords so that we have this collaboration between the hands? Like when I'm doing... So there's a lot of things that are going on there, and we need to break that down step by step. So the third thing is rhythm. A good rhythm to get started with is just like... Right, so just some simple rhythm like that, or... You can play around with different rhythms. One nice way of coming up with rhythms is listen to your pop songs that you enjoy, copy those rhythms. So if you hear the keyboard player go da, da, okay, we'll take that rhythm and now try coming up with your own diatonic chord progression song using that rhythm, and just play octaves in the left hand. Want, put on a drum beat or something, and you can play along with that as well. All right, so learning the major scale, learn the diatonic triads, learn your diatonic seventh chords. Now, all of this stems from your Piano Essentials. And if you want to get this Piano Essentials sheet, you're going to want to go back to my nobowlpiano.com website. But Piano Essentials is where you learn the scale, you learn your triads, you learn your seventh chords, you really start to understand the key and the scale. You have to own your major scales. If you do not know your major scales, forwards and backwards, inside and out, you can spell any of them quickly. You know, B flat major scale, B flat C, D, E flat, F, G, A, B flat. The third is D, the ninth is C, the fifth is F, the 13th is G. All right, bam, 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 bam. You gotta know those scales quickly. Spell the 1, 4, 5 chords in the key of E flat. E flat, G, B flat, A flat, C, E flat, B flat, D, F. That's E flat is 1, A flat is 4, B flat is 5. All right, so that's the point. You really understand that scale and how to manipulate and move around in that scale quickly. That's piano essentials, all right? That's what you want to start with first. That right there is 30 years of teaching experience boiled down onto one sheet. Now, if you'd like to download this sheet, you can go ahead to nobullpiano.com and you can get that sheet. Now, what I like to say to my students is, practice ain't bull, okay? This stuff takes time. And it takes practice. So if you're thinking that, oh, I'm going to get this down in 3 easy steps, please unsubscribe from my channel. Don't follow my stuff. Do not put your name in on my website. Go someplace else, because that's not what I'm going to teach you. I'm going to teach you a no bullshit approach to learning the piano, but you have to understand that you have to practice. If you don't practice, you're not going to get anywhere. So you have to make sure that you practice. To get started, go back to nobullpiano.com, put your name and email address in, and download that free Piano Essentials worksheet. You can also see my other videos there. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.